Hey, Scott, I like your sweater.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
sweater season.
It is. And you look it feels very holiday-ish. I love it.
I know. It's that cozy time of the year.
It is.
I
It
love it.
is.
Well, I'm looking forward to our topic today because we're going to talk about how to share customer success stories when we
Yeah.
are presenting. This is such a powerful tool for presenters to really capture, Scott.
Yeah, I think of people mostly in sales and marketing that do a lot of this stuff. The cool thing, though, is by talking about customer success stories, I think anybody who tells a story, even if it's not centered on a customer, you're going to learn something.
I love these stories, and I believe when presenters share stories, it makes it such a better experience, not just for the audience. I think it makes it more fun also for the presenter, because when we, as presenters, when we share our stories, we know our stories so well. It's not something we have to memorize. It actually calms us as the presenter because we're talking about something interesting and relevant to us. We're not just giving a data dump or a fact check. I really love how stories impact the presenter.
Yeah, I think we're so used to thinking of presentations well, let's put it this way. We often deliver presentations in a lecture-like way.
Yes.
And we want to talk about it. I mean, when we're talking with a client, when we're speaking with a client or would-be client, when we're speaking with a prospect about the idea that we might work with them, it's all very vague to everybody. You know, what is this going to be like? How do you work? And what stories do is they take that vagueness and sort of wash it away. You say, here's a very real way of doing things. Let me share, I want to share a quick anecdote from it was about 2 weeks ago. I got a call from a good friend who was interviewing for a sales position. And they were asked to come prepared with 2 presentations, one about them and their past work and some successes, some examples of some successes. And we decided pretty quickly that, oh, this is story time. This is when you tell a story.
Absolutely.
The interesting thing is they did all this stuff that I just described, and they were offered the job. There was actually a comment that said, you know, all of these other folks that applied for the job, they talked about examples of work that they've done, but it was all numbers. It was all very sterile.
A resume dump.
Yeah, right. And they commented, they said your stories stood out. They helped you stand out. And the funny thing is, while they offered him the job, he decided as a result of the interview that he didn't think it was a good fit for him. So the counterintuitive thing is that a customer success story is not really about you, the vendor, you know, the company that comes in and saves the day. It's about the customer. Like the customer is the hero of the story. And if you don't have that straight, everything gets kind of mixed up, you know, from the beginning.
And Scott, are you referring to it's the wins and the successes of the customer?
Yeah, I mean, conceptually, that's what we do when we're serving any client, any customer, is we're helping them to succeed in some way.
Right.
But it's confusing because we're not telling the story, a customer success story, to a prospect so that they love the customer we served. It's so that they see the customer we served to be a lot like them. And in the end to think, oh, well, if we work with these guys, this company, we're going to experience the same success that those folks experienced. So it gets
that's
confusing.
Brilliant.
What's that?
That's brilliant because it brings your audience into that experience
Yes.
that you have had with a customer. So then they can visualize, this is what it's going to be like to work with this individual. And this is the type of success that they can bring to us in our company.
if you tell a really good customer success story, it sort of starts about them. It talks about, well, they were doing their work and they ran into a problem. And then they tried to solve the problem, but they struggled in doing it. And often in stories, those two parts of the story take up a whole lot of the entire story. But in a customer success story, what's a little bit different is that you, the company that comes in to save the day, you come in a little later in the story and you provide this turning point. I mean, we could technically call it the climax of the story, where things sort of turn around for the customer that you're serving. They're struggling, and then you come into the picture and you act a little bit more like a right-hand man or a mentor. You come in and provide the resources they need to succeed, the insights.
Yes, the value.
And that means that even though there's quite a bit of story about the customer before you enter the story, there's still a lot of story to tell once you're in there about what did you do? How did you help them?
So Scott, I want to add to this point. I think it's really also critical that we don't spend too much time explaining the customer or going into too much detail, because if it's too long, then we can start losing our audience at the same time.
I like to remind everybody when they tell a story that stories are about people. And so instead of saying, well, in this particular example of a customer we helped, the client came to us with, a problem. They had this much revenue and then we cost this much and all that they actually talk about people. So they'll say, well, Jennifer from Coca-Cola was struggling with, and that way when they talk, it's in vivid terms that the listener can imagine.
Yes.
They can actually create a picture. So make sure that, go ahead.
It brings the audience, your audience, into that story so that they can feel it and hear it and taste it. And that's what makes it engaging, and it makes it stick for them. That's how they remember it.
Right, exactly. And it keeps them captivated.
Yes.
It's so much better than reading sort of this sterile, sheet of here's a customer success story where client is, here's the name, problem, here's the problem. No, you want people to be drawn in.
Yeah.
And talking in terms of people and events, like we jumped on the call, I could sense that our customer was anxious about something. I could hear it in her voice. Those kind of details create that vivid experience and make it memorable.
It does. It paints the story, and then your audience can feel it with you. Scott, what would you say is the biggest tip, the most valuable tool around sharing customer success stories?
I think the biggest tip is make sure that the story is really about the customer and it starts with the customer, but that you get through that and set the story up fairly quickly so that then you can talk about how you intervene to help them succeed. That's the main thing. Be very clear on who's the protagonist in this story. You're a customer. And then you're kind of that mentor that flies in and helps them succeed. And if you do that, I think you'll generally tell a good customer success story.
Yes. And be sure to take the time to write it out or type it out. Create that visual for yourself so that you're sharing what is most important, so that it comes across very clear and simple for the audience.
All right. Now, what are we going to be focusing on next week? What's next week's episode about?
Oh gosh, next week we're going to talk about personal branding and how it impacts our presentations.
All right. That sounds good. All right, everybody.
Fun topic.
Thank you for listening. And we'll see you in a week. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.